Hey y'all, before we start, I have a trigger warning or content warning. In this episode, we discuss mental health issues, including depression, eating disorders, and suicide, in a frank manner. If you're in a headspace where this could be detrimental to you, or you just don't want to listen to these heavy topics, then I recommend skipping this one. In addition, nothing we say is intended to be a substitute for professional advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your mental health professional or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding your mental health. Do not disregard professional advice or delay in seeking it because of something we say. Thanks. Welcome to Caffeine and Nikotine,
a podcast where we talk about things,
hit our vapes,
and drink coffee.
I'm Tiberius.
And I'm Rain.
Here's a conversation.
So, if you had one piece of advice for, partners quarantined right now together, if for people who have a partner with a mental illness, what would that piece of advice be? And I get that it's hard to blanket statement. There's so many different types of mental illnesses, but it could be whatever. It doesn't have to hit everyone. It doesn't have to apply to every situation.
Well, yeah, you stole a little bit of what I was going to say, which was it kind of depends on the mental illness. Because, we both have issues, but our issues are so different in the way that they need to be handled.
Yeah.
And because of that, we also approach each other's things differently. I feel like we both do a lot of approaching the other person's thing the way that we want the other person to approach our thing.
Yeah.
And that doesn't work really.
That's sort of
a lot of the time.
Treat others how you would want to be treated. Empathy trap.
Yeah. Well, because today, for example, you were like, you need to do the thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, telling me to do a thing is making it worse. And you were like, get up and go for a walk or do something. And I was like, okay, it's still making it worse. Doing it again didn't make it better. And that's what you need in the moments. Because even though it's depression, in both of those categories sometimes for yours is depression.
Yeah.
And I've been experiencing depression, but we want people to treat it differently.
Yeah.
You want me to come in and be like, nope, we're not doing this today. Get up, do a thing. Just do whatever, do one thing, blah, blah, but you're not laying in bed. Don't do that.
Yeah.
And, I want more, coddling and,
Yeah.
I want somebody to meet me where I'm at in that moment.
Right, and I'm like, bring me up closer to your level. I just need a little bit of momentum.
Yeah.
And then I can, get this train a-moving again. Yeah, that does happen, where we're both we'll run into the other person's preferred style of being interacted with by way of that happening to us instead.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting, because, I see that more now that we're talking about it, that I treat yours mostly how I'd want mine to be treated.
Yeah.
Where I'll come sit in bed with you, and I'll rub your hair, and I'll be like, hey, it's okay. What can I do for you? You know, do you want some coffee? You want some tea? You want me to make a blanket fort in here and bring your favorite shows in? What can we do? Right. And so I try and bring things to you and help you, and that's what I'm looking for in those moments.
Well, I feel that leaves a potential awesome, obviously there's adjustments that need to be made, but it feels now we have potentially an easier chance at making those adjustments than we would without having accidentally done that for each other, because now I have a model of this is the sort of thing I should be doing.
Look at
how you have treated. Right, because it might not be the thing I'm necessarily looking for in that moment. It's nice to be comforted. That's great. But that's not what I'm searching for in that moment. That's not. I don't know if I'm necessarily searching for anything in that moment, but that's not what serves me best in that moment. But I've had a lot of examples of it, so now I have a lot of, like, okay, well, act as if, like, what would Rain do in that situation? And just embody that. Obviously adjustments will need to be made for you personally, but that sort of tone of that vein of things, vein of activities and choices seems like something that's would be easier to tap into now.
I want to be treated like I'm sick, basically.
Right.
Like, do you want soup? Do you want me to bring shows in here for you? Like...
That's fair.
And you definitely, like, I've tried it a few times, like, similar to, I think, you're needing or whatever in those moments. I've been like, but I haven't been, like, as harsh. I don't know if I have it in me to be as harsh as you are. I was like, nope, we're not doing this. Get the fuck up. It's like, that feels so abrasive to me. Like, I don't know how to get there.
I mean, I don't think I would be offended because, like, I don't necessarily have...
Well, I'm not saying you would. I'm just saying I'd feel uncomfortable being like that. Like, that's so far outside my comfort zone of what I want to, like, do for people when they're feeling sad.
That's fair. That makes sense.
But yeah, so I don't know what, like, blanket advice I would give to anybody. Did you want this?
No.
Maybe try not to take your partner's, like, mental illness stuff serious. Like, not seriously, Personally, yes. I had that thought before I said that, where I was like, don't say seriously. That's the worst one. But, like, personally. That's not how it came out. But yeah, don't take it personally. Because, like, I feel like that's a mistake a lot of people make. I make that one with you a lot. And people in general make that mistake a lot, especially with people who are depressed and lashing out.
Yeah.
And, like, that's where I was at today. And I, at one point I was like, I just want to be mad at you and I don't know why,
Yeah.
Because that's one of, I guess, maybe my defense mechanisms or something like that. And I just, like, I kept feeling angry, like, long after you were even giving, like, a hint of a reason, like, reasonable probability, like, to be angry.
Yeah.
I was just like, but I'm so mad at you, but you are clearly going out of your way to be kind to me right now, but I'm still so mad. And I want to find things to latch onto. And you just kept, like, diffusing them. And I was like, well, fuck. Apparently I just still want to be mad. I don't know why.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting seeing you be mad in that way. Because it's only happened a few times.
Yeah.
Because it's just, like, not the main car you drive. Like, when shit goes out of whack for you, it doesn't go to anger very quickly. It goes just a bunch of other places. There's a few other options, but anger is nowhere near that.
Yeah.
That's kind of where my brain goes when shit's out of whack, like one of the few options.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I take yours personally so often.
Yeah. Well, and that's part of what helped me today was like, okay, I've seen this from the other side of this. Yeah. So this doesn't... How do I just detach from the thing that's happening now, see it as like, oh, you're searching for a thing to be mad about right now? Because, like, I've been there. Like, once you have that feeling, it's very easy to, like, want to justify it. Like, it's weird having that feeling and having nothing to do with it, right? Like, nothing that makes sense to do with it, at least. So you have to find a reason suddenly to feel that way and just go about it the back-asswards way. And so I was like, I see this happening. And then each of the things would happen, and there would be a moment where you would, like go for that sort of what's the right word? Like, you would take that opportunity and try being angry at me for a thing. And it's just like, oh, I didn't see that it was going to be this thing, or like whatever, or like, oh shit, that was an option. That surprised me. And so for me, it was more of a mini game of like noticing the things. Like, what are the things that turn into this, and how, because they all had like a kernel of truth to them, right? Like, they were almost a thing that was real.
Yeah.
And so, it was interesting to see how they were being a thing. There was... it's just interesting. And I feel like if you can continue to find... I'm going to answer my own question. My advice would be... But it might be the same answer as yours, so I might not be giving anyone anything new. I might not be contributing to this conversation at all, is what I'm essentially saying. Cool. Continue... I guess it's more of an add-on of yours. Continue to start and then continue to try to find a way, something other than taking it personally, right? Like, it's, to me, saying like, oh, don't take it personally is true. But it's kind of like, don't think about anything while you're meditating. Mm-hmm. Where, okay, I get, don't take it personally, but what should I fucking do instead? And so my thing would be like, anything instead. For me, it's like when I can most get into a mode that I'm comfortable in, which is like analysis and finding something interesting and just like exploring and like learning about what is happening. If I can take all of the days where you were having more mental health trouble and just use them as like, oh, I'm gonna learn a bunch of shit today. Like, you're ready to take notes, you're ready to fucking like up your game, but be on your game, because learning takes concentration and focus, and you gotta pay attention to details and shit. And so on those days, we can make in my opinion, we can make some of the biggest relationship progress, because things all sort of like pretenses and stuff get stripped away, and just like the exact issues get put on the table as they are, like in their, quote, purest form. And so like, if I'm on my game, I can see the thing as clearly as I'm ever going to see it. Like, you don't have to tell me about it or anything like that. You can just be experiencing the thing, and I can observe it through your experience of those emotions. So yeah, I would say find some other angle to interact with the thing that works for you. Like, maybe I call them mini games, and like, I don't mean to be, like diminutive to anything, but just how my brain gamifies most things.
I was gonna say, I'm not taking it personally, but I can understand giving other people context. Right. That's interesting, because I don't know how to describe how I interact with it with you, because I've had to do that to some extent, with your anger stuff.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's honestly, I think it's worse than that. Like, worse than, like, gamifying it or whatever. Because, right. And I'm trying to think of the words to put it in.
Yeah.
For me, I guess it's a game to some extent, but it's more like, if I do all of the right things in this, then on the other end of this, there's nothing that he can say. Like, if I don't raise my voice...
Just cover my ass.
If I don't, like, get angry back, if I don't lose my cool, and if I just say reasonable, practical things this whole time, then, like, he can't come at me like later as like a, you know, a real thing.
Right.
Like, and your anger, because, you know, you have bipolar and stuff, like, it has a time span. Like, I never get to know, like, what the time frame is exactly, but there is a time frame on it. And so if I can make it that, you know, half an hour, or that hour, or sometimes even that, like, 3 hours or so, and I can just not fuck up that whole time and just be like, well, no. Okay, well, I'm open to talking about that later. Oh, all right, you're going to... Okay. Like, and if I just keep that cool the whole time, then there's nothing later.
Yeah.
You can't, like, cling to anything later that, you know, and I think it shortens that time span too.
No, like, re-triggering.
Yeah. Well, because today, you know, like, I kept trying to, like, grasp those things that I could still be angry about. And then, like, it didn't work because you know.
Yeah.
You were like, okay, well, that's fine, or you're right, or, you know, whatever. And I was like, okay, well, I can't grab onto that anymore, you know. And so that was limiting to my anger to some extent. So
yeah, I do find maybe that would be a big component of it. Is like sometimes it is just a hold on and wait through the thing.
Yeah.
You know, and I feel like this kind of applies for a few of the things where, like, even for depression, like, a depressive episode lifts. Now, it may be very momentary, like, you might be in an unfortunate situation where, like, 80% of your days you're depressed, 20% of your days you have any sort of chance of not being depressed, right? Like, that's a reality out there. But if you're not adding fuel to the thing, if you're just not making the thing worse, then you have the best chance of making being in a position to then turn it around in some way. Sometimes you can't turn it around, but you do have the opportunity almost always to make the situation worse.
I think that was something that made it worse today, is that you were putting so much pressure on, like, turning it around right then.
Yeah.
And, like, I wasn't ready for that, you know?
That's fair.
Like, I needed a minute to, like, cry it out and to let go of some of that and stuff. And you were like, nope, let's do a thing. And I was like, I am not ready for that. Like, I'm not there yet, man.
Yeah. That's fair, because I'm thinking about this from, like, why would I, if that's what I'm looking for, at that point in time, if I mirror us, I'm not necessarily looking to be emotional at that point. Like, I'm probably already there and I want to get out of that state. And so it's like, well, I'll cry on the walk, or I'll go sing for a while. I'll cry halfway through that when that finally, starts getting through my body and then comes out in that way.
Yeah, you're a lot better at just crying when you feel it, though. Like,
yeah, okay.
I'm not as good at that. Like, well, and it's because our mental issues have different origins, you know?
Sure, yeah.
And, like, a lot of the situations that I felt the need to cry in when I was younger, they were punished. Like, if I did cry in those, I was punished. Like, it was, abusive situations when I was a kid, and then Cross Creek, which was also, like, you get categories if you cried during the wrong time or whatever, so...
Yeah, that wasn't ever a thing for me. Like, obviously you couldn't, like, be wailing and, making a damn fool of yourself, but, like, you gotta cry, you could just fucking cry.
Yeah. Yeah, so I cover it up most of the time, like, if I can, and then... fuck going out in public crying, like, that's not a thing for me. The other day, I, like, sat there and fought tears back until my break. Like, hardcore sat there and fought tears back until my break, and then just, like, I was glad that I was on a different break schedule from everybody, because I just lost my shit on my break. So I was like, that was when I was like, alright, you can break then. Like, you can fall apart
This
then.
is the scheduled crying moment.
Yeah.
What?
I've had a few rough days at work this past week.
Yeah.
I've just been depressed for so long. Like, I was depressed before the quarantine shit.
Yeah.
And I was already, like, feeling that. And this is just, it's it's gotten so much worse, and everything is going so poorly.
Yeah.
It's a recipe for mental illness disaster.
I have found your the difference in our relationships with crying in public to be very interesting. You know, it's like I don't know if I cried in public a lot growing up. You know, like that. And maybe I did. I just don't have the memories of it or whatever. But it just wasn't a big thing. But I know that like after I got divorced, after I came back into the world, it was basically through crying in front of people while singing karaoke songs. So I just did that over and over and over in front of drunk people at bars. I was like, you have to fucking watch me. You can't even really say shit about it. You know, like, what are you gonna do? Be an asshole to me while I'm on stage? Like, everyone wants to have a good time here.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's like the few times I've cried in quote-unquote, like, public, were mostly, like, not really in public still. It was, like, me at a friend's house or something. And, like, you could ask how that shit went. It's like, it was, like, me falling apart and, like, you know, in most cases, if I've gotten to that point where I'm, like, reaching out to the public about it, I'm already suicidal.
Yeah.
Like, if I'm talking about somebody outside of my living situation about being depressed, I'm suicidal, and that's the only reason I'm there.
Yeah.
So in those situations, I'm already suicidal, I'm completely falling apart in front of this person, and then it's usually followed by, like, profuse apologizing, like, just, and, like, I'll wait, like, until the next day, and I'll feel so uncomfortable and so guilty about it, and I just apologize over and over again for my behavior, and then I don't talk to that person for, like, a month. Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's rough.
That sounds rough. I'm trying to think of who was the last person I, like, cried in front of that wasn't a partner. I mean, I haven't really hung, like, one-on-one. I haven't really hung out with a lot of people recently, though. I have no idea. Maybe it was, like, back when I was still married to an ex.
Yeah. Yeah, even when I talk to other people, like, and I'm not quite at that point, like, I hide it in layers of, like, irony and satire, and it's, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't usually cry. Like, I talked to the other day, and it was right after that whole conversation about how our living situation was about to be the actual worst. And I was like, this is happening. I'm probably going to kill myself. And he was like, don't kill yourself. And I was like, okay, but everything's terrible. You know, like, just laughing it off, because that's easier most of the time. And then I don't have to feel like I have to apologize.
That's a thing. I don't know, I'm just blatantly honest with people. Like, and I've definitely made people uncomfortable with it. I'm like, well, you shouldn't have asked how I was if you didn't want to know how I was. Like, I understand that this is a nicety, but I will drop that shit on you on a day where I'm, like, feeling like, fuck the world, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, how are you? And I'm like, well, just, like, dump it on them, like, bitch.
Yeah, I try not to lie to people, so, like, I have given, like, random store clerks and stuff, like, more than they bargained for with the simple, like, how are you, or how's your day going? But, like, I still have that, you know, that tone with it, that, like, joking sort of tone. But, like, they've definitely been uncomfortable. Because, like, I imagine it's very, like, Joker-esque, where I'm just like, oh, everything's the fucking actual worst. Like, I am so depressed.
I've run into that before. Like, at karaoke and stuff, and I've, like, just offhanded, you know, been caging and fucking offhanded ass, like, oh, how's it going? And then someone's, like, been too real. I'm just like, oh, I've made mistakes. Like, this was why I don't ask people how we're
that's
doing.
the look. That's the look that people get, or they're just like wide-eyed, like, all right, well, your total is 87.35. I hope your day gets better. Or,
right, that's all.
Life maybe doesn't seem like a day-specific thing. Yeah, it's pretty bad.
I've been too deep. Yep. One, I'm not a terribly, I don't know what the right word is. Like, I don't tend to get terribly sentimental towards people, like, that I'm not.
Yeah, like emotionally invested.
Yeah, like, there's two categories of people, and it's people who, like, I love and care about, and I will do whatever for. And then there's kind of everyone else who, like, I don't wish anything bad on. I just don't have any interest in what you're doing because I want to focus on basically just the people I'm fucking with. Just my tribe. Yeah. And so, like, when you're outside the tribe and you bring that, I'm just like, oh, what's the kindest way to end this conversation exactly right now? Like, I do not want to engage in this any further. I am not getting paid to be your psychologist. Like, I have too many people who I actually have to care about their emotions. I'm sorry, you need to find someone who does. But there's not a nice way to fucking do that.
Yeah.
So it's just, it's an awkward predicament.
See, I'm the opposite. I always want to help people a lot, and I end up just having, like, weird, extra long conversations with people about, like, their problems. Like,
where they end up smoking cigarettes in the fucking house. You remember that?
That happened. Yeah, it's shit like that. I get myself into shit like that, or, like, which, like, sometimes it works out really well. I'm glad that me and have had those conversations, but, like, I barely knew, and because I happened to be at the bar one of the nights that she was in emotional turmoil, and, like, blah, and I asked her how she was doing, she told me things, and I was like, oh shit, that's a lot. And then I was like, well, you can talk to me anytime, like, for real, I've been through a lot, blah, 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 and that's why I do that, because I've been through a lot, and I've been in situations where I felt like I had nobody to talk to, or, like, especially, with my ex, like, I was in a situation where I had complained to everybody that was within my, like, immediate circle of friends so much and so often, and, like, I had been so, like, fucked up emotionally for so long that, like, people seemed tired of hearing about it, or maybe I just, I just felt like they probably were, or something, And so I started, like, seeking people outside that immediate circle, and I ended up having really long conversations with people that I barely knew. Like, hey, everything's terrible, blah, blah, blah. I know I don't know you that well, but you said I could talk to you anytime,
Yeah.
I mean, that's how we got together.
That's true.
Yeah. Yeah, it was because of things like that. And so, yeah, when was like, hey, I could really use somebody to talk to, I was like, hey, yeah, let me know anytime. And then we ended up having, like, a 3.5 hour long conversation one day about her now ex and how shitty he was being and whatever. Yeah. And I was just, like, walking around this house on the phone with her for, like, 3.5 hours, just, having that conversation. We still don't, like, really talk or know each other that well. We've just talked to each other about, like, really deep personal moments a couple times.
Yeah.
But yeah, I always try and be there for people like that.
You're way nicer than me, though.
Yeah.
That's a thing. I could never claim that in the opposite direction.
I've been there so hard so many times. Like, I don't want somebody to feel like they have nobody to go to,
Yeah. I don't think I could do that. Like, I don't know, I think I could, but there's so much follow-up involved in a lot of that It's like, if I wasn't... it's hard for me to make a lot of new friends if I'm not trying to make new friends, right? And that's kind of what that is turning into, is you're like almost committing, like, we're going to be friends now in some capacity. And I have a hard time maintaining the friendships I do want to keep right now. Like, because of, like, going into depressive episodes and then being like, oh, now I haven't talked to you for however long, and now I feel like there's pressure on this to talk to you. But now I'm kind of also behind in everything else because, you know, depression has happened.
You just gotta let people know.
Yeah.
I mean, especially people that are in situations like that, like, they're, for the most part, gonna be pretty understanding. And, like, I'll let people know either before or after some shit like that's going on, usually after, because it's hard to, you know...
When you're in the thick of it, like, just get through.
Yeah. But, like, I'll usually let people know after. Just send them a message, like, hey, sorry we haven't talked in a while, blah, blah, blah. I've been, in a real shitty position for a minute.
Right. I'll try that in the future. I'm gonna bleep out names, but that goes for you and you. I'm gonna have fun with this. And you. There we go.
But yeah, I don't think there's, like, a blanket way to deal with a partner with mental illness. Like, I think...
Learn about their mental illness?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think you have to, like, learn as you go and kind of piece together... I mean, we've been together for, what, like 50 years or something now? And we're still learning how to cope with each other's mental illness, especially as it interacts with our own. It's like... Your anger stuff is often triggering for, like, my anxiety and or depressive stuff, and, you know, and sometimes when I'm depressive, I lash out, which I imagine is somewhat triggering for your anger stuff, and we've gotten into fights like that before, you know, and
right.
It's tough.
Yeah. I would say one thing... You know, I would recommend everyone learn about whatever mental illness. Like, if you have a partner with a mental illness, learn about it.
Right, research it independently.
I would
talk to the person about their interaction with it.
Yes, I was going to say, I would add the step, though, of talking to them about the things that you research. Because, for a few reasons. Like, every version of the thing is going to be slightly different than, like, a textbook definition of an illness, right? Because the person is a person. They're not just a definition. They're not wholly defined by whatever mental illness that is, right? So there's going to be differences from person to person. And some of the advice for, like, what will make a person with such and such feel better is just not going to help. Like, it's going to make that person feel worse, or they are not going to like it, or run into something that looks similar in the past.
Yeah, everybody has different triggers and different specific, like, case-specific issues, you know? And then there's also terrible advice floating around on the internet. Like, I've seen that one go around Facebook a number of times. The one where it's like, if you know somebody with anxiety, like, and they're having a panic attack, just hug them, and even if they try to push you away, just hug them, and, like, that is honestly one of the absolute worst things somebody could do for, like, to me while I have a panic attack. And, like, anybody that knows me
right,
knows
like, that's just not a thing that would even cross their minds.
Like... Well, and if it has, they've realized so fast that it's such a terrible idea. Yeah, that's a way to make it worse. And I'm sure it works for some people. Like, I'm sure, but, like, if you don't talk to the person ahead of time,
how would you know? You
can't know that. And if you just try it out in the middle of that, like, that might be the last chance you get to try that with that person. Like, that's not okay. I am not okay with it. Because it feels like being restrained to me. And so it just amps up my panic. And I'm just like, no, why are you... Nope, stop. Like, and if somebody didn't stop, then that's a whole different set of triggers. Like, no thanks.
Yeah, it just feels like advocating non-consensual physical touch is a dangerous and non-recommended idea for me.
Yeah, well, and on the other end, like, if you're a person that has a mental illness and something speaks out to you, you know, and you're like, no, I think that would help, show your partner. Like, give them tools to help you.
They'll give them the manual because you didn't come with one.
Right.
Help them build a manual. We've
done that. Like, you've shown me some stuff on bipolar that's, you know, that's been helpful in how I, like, think about it or interact with it. And I've shown you a few things that, you know, at least, because sometimes it's just nice to have the other person have some understanding, too, of, like, what it feels like in those moments.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, it helps you look at the situation. It helps that other person, whoever's experiencing those, like, observing them, helps them understand just more fully what's going on. You know, and for me, I know the more I can understand about it, the less I can take it personally, because I can know where it's coming from and I see the actual thing that is happening versus what my brain wants to say, which is like, threat, you know, amygdala, fire off, like, you're in danger right now, you should fight back, you know, like, no, we don't need to do that, this is a thing, we know what's going on, it's high stress, but we can do this right now, we just gotta navigate our way through this situation, or everyone will be cool.
Yeah, I feel like quarantine has been rough. I feel like it has been a huge trigger for so many people. Like, this is one of the worst times to have a mental illness. Because, I mean, like, just in this house, we've got OCD, which, like, you have to deal with OCD.
Yeah, check on your OCD friends. They're not okay. They predicted this. They all predicted this would happen, and this is their nightmare. They're living their nightmare. Check on your OCD friends. Sorry to interrupt.
No, I mean, that's, you know, that's real. Well, and like we talked about the other day, like, in this situation, a person with OCD is now being told to do things that counteract any sort of, like, behavioral therapy they've had.
Right.
Like, any sort of therapy they've had where it's like, don't wash your hands that much. Like, you don't need to do that. Things are going to be fine if you don't wash your hands that much. Like, they're being told, like, nope, actually do wash your hands that much. Anytime you think about washing your hands, probably just fucking do it.
Or just go for it. It's like, that's dangerous. Like, you have to engage.
Fauci literally said, like, you should approach washing your hands with, like, a compulsive, obsessive fucking capacity. Yeah. Like, do that. So it's a literal, like, message from a scientist from the CDC. Like, wash your hands.
Your OCD is right.
Right? That's so crazy.
I understand that everyone with OCD has a hand washing thing. We're not trying to put, you know, everyone in a box like that. Yeah. It's not how it works.
No.
I do. So, like, we're mostly kind of just talking about me right now. It's a thing I've worked for many years to get away from. Have done a pretty good job to, you know, not engage in that sort of a compulsion outside of the necessary or appropriate amounts. So yeah, this has been very interesting to be like, engage in your ritual, but don't get stuck in it.
Right.
Like, drink some alcoholic who's recovering,
right?
But don't drink too much.
Or, you know, we talked about the other day, like, that compared with...
It's not exactly the same. Don't hate alcoholics. I'm not trying to fuck with anyone.
But, you know, the other comparison where we talked about my eating disorder stuff, where it's like, it'd be like if somebody came out tomorrow and was like, don't eat any more than 300 calories a day.
Right.
Or you might die, or other people might die. You don't know. But, like, don't do it under any circumstances. Like, don't eat more than 300 calories per day. Like, that would be so counterintuitive to everything that I've, like, worked to deal with my eating disorder stuff. Yeah. Like, all right, so okay, I'm not gonna be alright through this. Like, there's no way I don't come out of this deep in my eating disorder. I think you've actually been doing really well considering the circumstances.
I think just my tactic, and I don't know if I've necessarily been doing well, but I think my tactic has just been don't engage with the outside world.
Yeah.
That way I don't have to engage as beyond the normal amount in the rest of the habits, because I'm just not running into people who aren't also here all day.
Well, and it's given my anxiety a really awesome scapegoat, because we've kind of been ahead of this, likely in part because of your OCD and my anxiety. We kind of got ahead of this whole thing. Like, as soon as there were reports of of this being a thing, the first cases in America, we pulled the kids out of school. I started wearing gloves and masks before anybody else was really doing that.
Yeah.
And so, my anxiety was like, okay, this is uncomfortable. Like, you were there the first couple times I had to go in stores like that, where I was like, people are going to look at me weird. They're going to make fun of me. Like, this is so uncomfortable for me. I'm drawing a spotlight to myself now. Fuck. And so I was just like, no, my husband's OCD, so, it's... I have to do this so that he doesn't freak out.
Yeah, I do not mind being blamed for that. I will take all of that.
So, that's made it easier for me,
awesome.
at least in that initial transition part. I was just like, nope, Ty's really OCD, so I have to do it this way.
Perfect. I remember the first time we went into a grocery store, and I had the mask. We both had masks on. We both had, I think I had one glove because I was holding the phone in the other hand. It was just like, I'm not going to do anything other than hold this phone to look at the list. For me, it was one of the more comfortable times in a store because I'm like, man, I kind of want to do this all the time now. Like, this is a thing we could have done the whole time. Like, how many people cough in these stores? And, so I can already feel the pull of a lot of those desires of hey, you could just separate your whole microbiome from everyone else's microbiome with these 20 steps sort of creeping in, that sort of thought process, that rabbit hole creeping in. And so I like that we've been able to come up with essentially just a protocol, because now it's a way to engage in a thing, but I can kind of start and stop. There's an ending point to it.
Yeah. Well, I'm still doing things that are more than other people are doing. So, so we've just been that one or two steps ahead of everything on this. So, I'm spraying myself and everything down with disinfectant. Nobody else is doing that.
No.
They're wearing masks and stuff, but they're not spraying things down with disinfectant. Which seems crazy to me. What is even the point then? This is one of those few moments where, my anxiety and your OCD are just intersecting. Because I'm I have so much anxiety about, mostly any of the kids getting sick.
Yeah.
That really... I don't want, there's kids dying of this now and stuff. I can't do that.
Yeah.
I can't fuck with that. So,
at all costs.
So, that's been my thing on it. And it's if I bring a bunch of packages from the store where only, half of the people still are wearing face masks, a lot of Natural Grocers has been really nice. Because all of their employees are wearing face masks. And most of the customers are. And there's also way less customers than any other store I could go into right now,
Yeah.
But, in a Walmart, half the people aren't wearing face masks. It's not mandatory right now, so nobody gives a shit.
When some people are...
actively against it, yeah. So I've just been really anxious. And what's the point of bringing packages in the vehicle that have been coughed on or breathed on or touched by people that aren't being as careful and cautious about this? Who was it? It was the liquor store guy the other day. I went to get pint or like a pint of something, and I sprayed it off. Were you with me that day? I feel like you were. It was a couple weeks ago.
Yes.
And he was like, "Don't worry, we disinfect everything in the store every night." And I was like, "Oh, that's cute." Like, no, that doesn't
that's
matter.
Going to comfort me?
Like, you're literally in there right now without a mask on, breathing on the pines as you grab my pint.
That one was weird because bro had a mask on. He just wasn't wearing it.
Right, like around his neck or whatever?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the same today.
I was like, bro, your face is too close to us to not be wearing your damn mask. Like, I feel that way all the time, but especially now.
Yeah.
You're a nice guy, but
and so
I don't want
it
this.
doesn't matter if you disinfect them all day, if you're also still breathing on them all day. Like, why would that...
Yeah.
I don't get it. There's limited logic in all of this. I feel like...
Yeah.
What's the best way to describe it? I don't know. I feel like people are doing things that make them feel better about doing the things, but that don't actually improve the situation. I feel like there's an actual word for that behavior.
I mean, it seems more like coping mechanisms than actually...
Yeah, it's something like that. That's not quite right. But yeah, I mean, like I said, if you're going to bring packages in the vehicle that have been breathed on and touched and potentially coughed on and whatever all day, like, why even wear a mask? Why even wear gloves? Why are any of us doing any of this if you're still going to do that?
Yeah, you're bringing back dozens of potentially contaminated items.
Like, the other things just make them feel better about it.
Yeah.
They don't actually do the thing.
It is interesting. I mean, I think a lot of people are just convinced that this is not really the problem that the mainstream media is making it out to be. And I wonder if that's a problem of, like, how we present information. Or if it's a cultural thing of, like, this is a thing that Americans do. Like, I'm hesitant to say something that blanket, but, like...
Some of it definitely is that. Some of it's this, like, American rebellious nature.
Sure.
You know? Where people are like, you're not gonna tell me what to do. You're not gonna lock me in my house. I'm not, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's been interesting.
Well, and I can see some of it, right? Like, I saw someone posting about, hey, we can't have the government telling us which businesses are essential and which aren't essential. You know, just because they like these businesses or because it makes them money, these ones get to stay open and we don't get to. So, like, some of us are never going to be able to reopen, blah, blah, blah. And so, like, I can see that case to an extent. Yeah. Like, I don't think it was picked in terms of, like, I like this business or I don't like this business. Because dispensaries, I don't think, would stay open if that was the fucking case. I think it was more a practicality of, like, which things do we have to keep open before this is a problem? Yeah.
Dispensaries created more of a problem. Like, trying to close down dispensaries created more of a problem than they were going to solve by shutting them down. Because, like, that first hour after they were like, all right, well, starting tomorrow, we're closing down all non-essential businesses. That's going to include dispensaries, blah, blah, blah. People were lining up in close proximity to each other, because that's how you line up for things, to go to dispensaries, and they were like, oh.
Please stop lining up like this. Please stop grouping up.
Nope, we'll just leave it open. We'll just leave it open and handle this more safely. And I mean, it'd be the same with liquor stores and stuff, too. Like, I imagine that's why they didn't do any of that.
People would be buying as much as they could, unfortunately. I mean, some people would like physically be in trouble without alcohol, right? Like,
that's true.
That was one of the arguments I saw for it was like, well, if you tell all alcoholics they suddenly have no access to alcohol, like, how many of them go to the hospital?
Right.
We don't need that.
That's true.
Like, we might not like that people can drink alcohol, but we would like it a lot less if suddenly during a crisis in our hospitals, we have a predictable amount of extra people in our hospitals.
Yeah.
I thought that the keeping dispensaries open made a little more sense on that same angle where it's like people use this as medicine. Like, I understand there are a lot of people who just smoke to smoke.
Yeah.
That's how that works. But there are a lot of people who, whether it be their seizures, whether it be their fibromyalgia, whether it be, there are so many things, whether it be their eating disorder. A lot of people, like, there are many accounts of people using this as an appetite inducer.
Yeah, that's true. And not only is that true, but you can't get a med card for that. So, like, if that's your only problem, the first time I went to get a med card, I talked to a lady on the phone before I set up my doctor's appointment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, well, what's your ailment or ailments that you're trying to see the doctor and get this prescription for? And I was like, well, I have a pretty serious eating disorder. And if I eat and I don't smoke weed, then I tend to get really nauseous. I want to go back to bulimia more often. Like, it's really difficult for me. And she was like, unfortunately, because bulimia is qualified as a mental disorder, we can't prescribe it for that. And then, because it's Colorado and the doctors here are super helpful, she was like, here's a list of things that we can do it for. Let me know if I hit any of the things. And she was like, migraines, TMJ, blah, blah, blah. Like, you can prove any of these things, we can prescribe this for you. And I was like, oh, I have those. Like I have migraines and TMJ. Yeah, I was like, I have doctors that, can tell you that I have these things. Even I've seen doctors about this. So. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember. That's crazy. That's not one of them.
Yeah, if that's your only problem, I think in California they've approved it for mental things, and they might have.
Sorry to anyone who is offended by me using crazy in that sense. It was. I should probably say that's surprising. I'm not trying to belittle anyone. That's a thing I recently became aware of. And so
I think that's, like most other words, like we're crazy, so we're allowed to use that.
You can use it if you're part of the category. I'm down with that. That makes it easier for me. Sorry, anyone who I offend. Yeah, because I just saw that, and maybe it works differently in this sort of a case, but it was... I don't remember who it was, some cancer patient, and they, due to like I think it was the chemo they were going through, weren't able to keep their food down, had no appetite.
Yeah, that's different because that's not mental, that's physical. And like I said, I think in California you can get it for mental things. And they might in Colorado now. Yeah. This was, 6 years ago. It was shortly after Nirvana was born.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, I remember thinking that was really fucked up, though, because, like, bulimia, more than a lot of mental disorders, even though a lot of mental disorders have physical characteristics with them, or qualifiers or whatever, but, like, bulimia, like, you can die from that. Bulimia and anorexia, you
all
have
the time
physical...
people do.
Yeah. Like, there's definitely a physical toll from that.
Yeah.
So it seems like it would, be both. But, they won't let you for that.
Huh. If you know anything about, like, the specific reasoning beyond what we're saying here, feel free to comment down below. I'm down. I'm down to learn. Because the differentiation, I guess, because you'd have to have, a psychiatrist. But how close are we to getting psychiatrists able to, like, do med cards? If anyone knows, let me know that one, because we might not need it at certain points, just because once most places go recreational, you'll be able to just do that, but... Which is
what we were talking about initially. It's like, I don't have a med card right now. I have a bunch of things I could get a card for.
Yeah.
But because it's recreational here, it's easier for me to just get it recreationally.
Yeah.
I don't have to deal with a doctor's visit or pay the money for that, and it would probably be cheaper in the long run if we did it that way, but we haven't had that amount of money at any point, really. I have to sneeze again. I think my sinus is really not cool right now. Let's try going sing. That was really intense.
Be easier to...
Oh, it's just easier for us to get recreationally, even though we both have things that would be legitimate medical reasons to get a card.
It's true.
And no, we're not the only people that do it that way, you know.
There's no way. So what I'm looking forward to is the eventual, full decriminalization. I almost said demonization. Decriminalization of hallucinogenics or hallucinogens, however that word ends.
It's cool. I'm drunk. I've fucked up a few words in this. I know I have. There's been a few times where I was like, that's not the word I was trying to say. Alright. Cool.
Yeah. But I feel like there's some interesting research there. And, whether it be around the research that's happening around PTSD, whether it be the research that's around depression. Like, there's just a lot of interesting things that I would like to know more about, and if it works, it seems way better than half of the drugs we have out there right now in terms of side effects.
I was working with said that people in Denver were selling spores now. I want to look into that. Seems interesting. Well, because I know it was decriminalized there.
Yeah.
To have them, but I thought it was still illegal to grow or sell them. But if it's not illegal to grow them, then... That
would be nuts.
Right?
I did find that microdosing experiment to be positive.
Yeah.
I never found myself seeing anything or, there was absolutely zero psychedelic effects throughout the entirety of it. We're going to pause for a nose blowing. Alright, you didn't hear it, but yep, a nose was blown. Yeah, I found that microdosing experiment to be positive. It would be interesting to just know more information about how, whether there were any actual effects or whether that was just placebo. Just anything in there. And I would like more knowledge on that whole subject.
Yeah, we could perform our own, mini experiment with it. It wouldn't necessarily prove anything to anybody else because it'd be such a small sample, but, we could take turns even, making each other drinks or smoothies or whatever with a microdose in them, or not,
Oh, blinded, essentially?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That could be fun, just for the sake of learning.
Right. Well, and it'd provide us with information on ourselves, which
it might not
is valuable to us, at least.
Yeah. You can't zoom it out and make it representative of anything other than the case studies.
So yeah, it would have to be maybe 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, and then you don't get to know which 2 weeks is placebo and which 2 weeks is not placebo. And daily journaling to be this is how I felt today, check off whatever boxes of, scale of 1 to 5, how did I cope with things, where was I with depression, anxiety, blah, blah, blah,
Yeah. See, that's also where more available research would help, because maybe 2 weeks isn't enough,
Right, that's true.
Frustrating, just having no real information.
Maybe a month on and a month off.
I don't know.
Right.
I mean, experimenting would give us our best chance of figuring that out eventually.
Yeah.
But that seems like a lot of potential experiments.
I like it.
Right. It doesn't seem, at least at this point, to be negative in any measurable ways. Like it didn't have noticeable negative effects that I could see.
I had a slight noticeable negative effect. My tummy hurt a couple times when I did it with an empty stomach.
Okay.
But
And just, I guess I never did it with an empty stomach, so that's not...
yeah, I did a couple mornings where I had a couple sips of coffee and did that, and I was just like, oh, my stomach, ow.
I think every time I paired it with walnuts. And matcha tea.
I mean, I think, unfortunately, that's a thing that more people have to start doing is, their own mini experiments with, their mental health and stuff. Because right now, we don't have a lot of good research, even on, pharmaceuticals.
Yeah.
There's not extensive research on it. There's not, over time, how does this affect you?
Longitudinal.
And, a lot of the studies being done on them are paid for by the pharmaceutical industry that, gets to make money off of them if they're profitable. Laundry lists of side effects even from those limited studies and stuff. So it's kind of rough out there for people with mental illness. There's not a lot of good options.
Yeah.
There's lesser of two evils options in most cases. Do I just deal with this, or do I deal with this drug that might help but might make me want to kill myself? Who knows?
Right.
We'll see.
Well, to me, the crazier part of this is that this is technically the best it's ever been to have a mental illness as a human.
Yeah, that's true and terrible.
Right. I guess maybe there's a higher rate of suicide. I would need to know that. I'd need to research that data more, but feels like in general, if you have a mental illness, your ability to still live, the percentage probability that you can still live a somewhat normal life is the highest probability it has been in human history.
Yeah, that's a fucking tragedy. And I mean, even still, people don't take it, as seriously as they should, or...
Yeah.
I think it's hard for people on the outside to really understand what's going on. I've always really liked that metaphor where, I guess there's a few variations of it, but the metaphor of having asthma versus having depression.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen that one or not.
Yeah.
But for people who haven't seen that, run through Facebook. Asthma is not being able to breathe or feeling like there's no oxygen in the room, but everybody else is breathing just fine. And depression and anxiety and things like that often feel similarly, where it's everybody else is fine. There's no reason you shouldn't be fine, but you're not. You're not fine.
Right.
And it's impossible to gasp that air if you have asthma. It's impossible to, get to that feeling if you're depressed or have anxiety, but nobody else can see it, and there's, seemingly no reason that should be the case.
Right.
I guess visibly no reason.
Yeah.
And then the other one I really like is, you wouldn't yell at somebody who had the stomach flu to stop puking,
Right.
Why are you yelling at a person with a mental illness to stop feeling that way?
Right. I feel I don't know, we could benefit from just a little more understanding of in general, understanding. That could be the end of the sentence. But of the mechanics of any mental illness, like clearly we have some basic knowledge of certain things. Like these are associated with this, or this sort of state of your brain is associated with this. Well, things like overactive amygdalas and these sort of ideas. We have basic understandings, but I feel like we have those understandings within people who like either research it or the experts in it, and it hasn't necessarily trickled down to all of society yet, where the idea of like, oh no, someone having a panic attack involves like there's a set of like brain processes in there.
Yeah.
And so if you really are coming from the outside, like you need to find a way to deal with the brain process, not just like the behavior you're seeing in front of you, because that's just a pattern, that's a product of that brain process. I mean, even what we were talking about earlier with like lashing out and whatnot, like part of that was like, oh, this is amygdala time. Like from my understanding, when I was seeing that happen, like this is amygdala time. We're searching for threats. We are trying to, like defend ourselves against threats. We're trying to fight back against threats. It's going to keep happening until this amygdala stops doing its thing right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm kind of just in for the ride. All of the things that happen after this are somewhat predictable because they're all going to fit in the category of amygdala is firing off fight, flight, freeze. What's the other one? Fawn. And so, like...
In a surprising turn of events, I did all of them except for the last one.
Right.
I usually do the last one.
Right, that is...
Yeah, I did the fight, and then I tried to, like, run away to the room.
Yeah. And there was freeze there, too, in it, to an extent.
Yeah, definitely, like, a few times when you were like, well, what do you want? And I was just like...
Yeah.
Yeah.
This was a roller coaster this day.
Yeah.
Like I said, though, I think it ends up with days. Like, I've definitely had fights, what I would consider fights with other partners. I don't necessarily think that we had a fight today. I think it just was like, in the same way.
Spider-Man was over.
Just like, I think it was more of like, okay, an episode of this happened. Like, if she had if you had an asthma, like, we'll go back to the asthma idea. Like, an asthma attack happened today, right? It's kind of how I've seen that. Whereas in most, if not all of my other relationships, I feel like the pattern of that is more like, okay, a fight happens, and then you end up further behind than you started before the fight. Like, bridges were burned, things were said that couldn't be unsaid, things were done that now are, in some way irreversible, or the consequences of them are inescapable. I find that we often, like, things will get rough, but we end up ending these days further ahead than we started those days, despite whatever, like, chaos storm that happened somewhere in the middle.
Yeah. Do you feel like that's because you have tried to understand me more, or do you feel like that's because of how we interact as partners, or because of my particular mental illnesses?
I think it's a few things, and I'm sure there's stuff I'm missing, but I do think it's because, like, alright, now I know more. Mm-hmm. Right, like, I've been able to gain more information, so that's always a positive. I think it's also, okay, now, this is a personal one for me, but it's like, now I've proven one more time that I am who I say I am. Mm-hmm. Like, there's no, and this, I'm sure, is like a holdover from past relationships, but it's like, you can't accuse me of something being someone other than who I say I am, because I've done the things that I said I would do the way that I said I would do them again. So for me, it feels like I've been given an opportunity to instill some trust. Like, this is me, I have integrity.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a selfish one, but that comes from these sorts of moments. As well as we tend to debrief, right, after we have some sort of incident, where we then discuss it and be like, all right, this didn't work for me. This is a thing that, like, I see you were trying to help, but this was, like, I think this would have been better if we had done
this one's a bit more formalized because we're doing it for a podcast, but this is not
unusual.
This is not unusual for how we handle these things afterwards, like in the aftermath of either one of us having a mental breakdown.
No. There's definitely standard procedure of, like, all right, now let's go back over that. And I mean, we've gone so far as, like, I've taken notes where we've had these sessions. I have a page of notes in my notebook that it's like, okay, try these things. Here are some options. If presented with this, go about it this way. And so we end up ending these days with being a little bit better armed in case the situation comes up. Not even in case, when the situation comes up again.
I feel like that's the thing. Like, I think you should reference that more often.
Yeah.
Because I think today would have gone better if you had, like, when I initially went to the room, if you had looked at that, we're like, all right, I'm going to go in there armed with these things.
Yep.
I
found myself in that position a few times where I'm like, oh, that would have helped me 20 minutes ago.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And, like, by the time I come to that realization, I'm dealing with some other, branch of the conflict. It's like, this would have sucked me. With that,
like, it's still hard, because, like...
Yeah.
I don't know. I get into that space, and it's like, I don't feel like anything can help, and I get, like, angry at people's attempts to help me.
Yeah.
And I don't know what to do in those spaces, and God forbid anybody ask me what would help, because, like, I have no idea, and that question makes me so mad when I'm in that space.
Right.
Like, why would you even ask me that? Clearly, I don't know what the fuck to do.
Like, I'd be doing that if I knew what the fuck it was.
But that list definitely seems like it would at least help.
Yeah. I mean, it has whenever I have been able to reference it and use things from it. I'm reminded of a time, that it's months back now, where I just, like, you were having some issue with eating. And I just made and brought in a bunch of food. I was like, you don't have to eat any of this. I'm just going to bring it all in. We're going to have a fucking feast in this bitch. And, like, I'll just start eating, whatever. And I was like, what? And just went about it. No pressure on the things. Like,
yeah, no pressure is definitely helpful to me in those situations. Any amount of pressure, and I lose it.
Yeah.
Whatever progress has been made at that point, if there's any pressure put on it, it's gone.
Yeah. That was definitely where that one ended up turning around. Because it had gotten rough before that. You were, fighting some demons. And then I was just like, fuck it. I'm going to get all the food. I'm going to find every bit of food that I think I can comfortably put in this room in a way that, doesn't freak me out about having to put the food on a surface or whatever. But, like, we'll bring in a dozen fucking things.
I told about that one. And she was like, that is amazingly sweet. And I was like, I know. Because, like, I told her about, like, the whole thing pretty earnestly, where I was like, no, I had said I'm hungry, and he was like, well, what do we have at the house? And, like, I fucking lost my shit. Like, it triggered a lot of things with people telling me not to eat, and I was drunk and angry and sad and, like, felt fat and, just thought he was attacking me for whatever reason, and just completely dove down that hole of, like, nope, you're trying to get me not to eat. And I was like, he just brought in all of the food. Like, And I told her about how you tricked me. You used drunk tricks. No, I need to go turn off that light. Like, okay, fine, but when you come back, we're going to talk about this. Like, okay, but I really need to go turn that light off now, though. Like, I didn't even question it, I don't think. I was like, didn't you already, like, turn that light off?
Just was like, I'm going to bring in a load of food. Like, I bring in... So the amount of food that I brought in, just to, like, clarify, it was multiple trips from the kitchen. Like, it was... I know I said feast because I meant feast.
Oh, God.
Like, I went back into that kitchen, like, 3 times and brought food out of it 3 times, and then went back once just to actually turn the light off eventually. But it was... Yeah, I had to finagle my way around. Like, no, I'm just going to go to the kitchen, like the light's still on, let me just turn that off. We don't want to waste electricity, blah, blah, blah. Go back and got an armful of food, dump it down on the ground. Like, no, I still have to turn the light off. Like, this is just, I needed to get the food, and like I said, the light, you don't need to waste any electricity. I was surprised at how well it worked, but I was not about to question it. Like, I'm using this. We are going to get everyone in a better place.
Oh, it was amazing.
It was, yeah, that night, it started poorly. That moment started poorly, but it was able to turn around once there was fucking 15 pieces of different types of food in there.
Yeah, I don't even remember what I ended up being okay about eating.
I ate so many things. That's what I remember. Because, like, it started off as I was just trying to help, but then I ended up actually being hungry. It's like, how about we do have a feast in here?
That was so sweet. And like, yeah, there's a few moments like that. And
yeah, if more situations went like that, it'd be similar to the ones where, you know, like where you've run into with my mania, that are like, oh, we can actually limit the amount of time that this burns so hot. And we can just get out, we can weather the storm, we can move on to the next part, and, you know, to the recovery from whatever, and then keep moving forward.
Well, and then, you know, mornings like today, it was like, I woke up with that already. It was one of those mornings where I was like, alright, I am grumpy.
Yeah.
And I was like, already having to convince myself, like, okay, just don't be grumpy at any of them. Like, you were the kids, you know, like,
I've been there, where just like, don't be
they
mad at
didn't
them.
do anything. It's not their fault that you're in a shitty mood. I had, like, nightmares last night. I had a hard time falling asleep, like, in a surprise twist. Last night, you did fall asleep, but it was earlier than I could, for whatever reason, you know.
Yeah, that never happens.
Yeah. Well, and I was so tired before you started to fall asleep. And it really felt like a role reversal. It's like I was so tired before you started to fall asleep, and then we were in here in the living room, and you fell asleep, and I could not. And then my whole body started to feel itchy.
Oh no!
Yeah.
Like an actual role reversal.
So, like, my whole body felt itchy, and, like, but you were laying on me, and so I didn't want to, like, disrupt you too much, and I was, like, fucking not okay, and I wasn't comfortable, and I couldn't get my mind to rest at all, and I couldn't get sleepy again, and I was like, alright, well, we should probably go to bed. Maybe if I lay in bed, I'll be fine. It got worse when I laid in bed, and I was like, fuck this.
Damn.
And so I stayed up for a while, just, like, looking at stupid shit on Facebook and whatever, and eventually convinced myself to fall asleep. So, yeah, and then I had nightmares and shit. And so this morning I was just, like, grumpy and just, like, don't talk to anybody. Don't be grumpy at anybody else. Just, like, ride this out until you're not, oh no. The vape is the dead.
Right, yeah, right out to the other end of the...
And, I had already, like, I was trying to get everybody to, like, move towards going to the Springs to put that money in the bank. And I don't know if you've ever had an issue like this in your head where, like, we've had so many recurring fights or incidents or whatever about it that you're like, I swear to God, if she brings this up, I'm not going to be chill with, like that thought. But I had that about the bank today. So I was like, we've had this conversation so many times. And I was like, I swear to God, if he fucks with me about the fucking bank thing again, if he says it one more time, I'm going to lose my shit. And then, like, I don't know, probably 15, 20 minutes after I had that thought, you came in and you were like, so what is stopping us from having a bank account in Pueblo? And I was like, that's it? Are you fucking serious?
This is the moment.
And that's where all of, like, my morning grumpy that didn't have anything to do with anybody, and my, like, grumpiness at having had that conversation however many times before this, and my grumpiness at, like, not being able to have an account in Pueblo, because, like, I'm also frustrated with that. I also don't want to have to drive all the way to the Springs to put money on the fucking bank card.
Who does?
No. And so, like, all of that just compiled into one, like, fuck fuck that, I can't believe you asked me that, like, fuck this, I don't want to have to drive there, clearly, like, I already told you didn't have to fucking go, why are we even having this? And so it was just all of that energy just, like, at you. And then, like, and it didn't make it any better that you're trying to diffuse the situation after that, because I was already so pissed, and then I needed somewhere for that energy to go, because I'd already decided I was going to be pissed about this. So it was so bad. It was just a perfect storm of bad shit.
Yeah, I walked right into that shit. Like, so unawares. I was just like, yeah, alright. So let's fucking make a plan for this. Let's, like, we can't solve this. This sucks. Whatever. Let's just get ready to solve this in the future. I feel like you have had
those things. Like,
I'm sure I have. I just can't think of one right now.
The first thing that came to my mind just now, I was trying to think that through, is, like, you playing games.
Okay. Yeah.
Like, the days where you've been already having, like, a rough time mentally, and you're like, I'm gonna play some games to try and, like,
transition out of this.
Yeah. And I've been like, hey, so are we gonna do the thing? And you're like, okay, I just want to play a game or two, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And then I feel like you have that, like, trigger in your head, like, ready to be switched, where it's just like, if she fucking asks me, like, you lost the first game that you were going to play.
Right.
And so you're like, no, fuck it, I'm going to play another game.
One more, just
if she fucking asks me why I'm playing another game, like, I'm going to lose my... like, I feel like we've had moments like that.
Yeah. That one I feel like has happened less recently, just because we've been playing a lot of chess.
Yeah.
Like, collect the whole friggin' tribe. And so everyone kind of has that one thing of like, oh, I see. That's a thing. I was just using that exact thing for that exact purpose earlier, so, like, I can understand that. Potentially why, people who game a lot tend to do better with people who game a lot.
I wish I saw Mario.
Oh, rest in peace. Yeah. System that we had to sell for rent.
Yeah. I miss it so much. That would be my jam right now.
Yeah. Caffeine, Nikotine, and Mario.
Yeah, we both have so many issues. It's really surprising that we don't run into these things more often. Like, that we fare pretty well most days.
Right.
It just is. Like,
the math on it is bad for us, so, like, if it works out well on any given day, it's
severe anxiety, severe PTSD, some depression. My depression's not necessarily severe.
Sure.
Like, because I would consider severe depression being depressed, like, more often than not. Or, maybe I'm incorrect in that.
Right.
Like, severe might just deal with, like, if you have depression bad enough that you have suicidal thoughts sometimes, But,
yeah. Not trying to minimize anyone's depression. It's not what's happening.
Yeah, I know.
Just trying to find a categorization here.
But yeah, I have all those things, bipolar and OCD and fucking...
Yeah.
Anger issues, seemingly sometimes independent of your manic things, because most of the time those coincide, but sometimes you just have the anger and it's not manic,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we have so many things, and so many of those things trigger the other person's thing.
Right.
So it's really interesting that we don't have more days like today.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Math is so bad. I should appreciate that more often when the things go well. Ooh, we did it. Keep building.
yeah. Well, I feel like there's no blanket advice. I don't know. I keep going back to that initial question, and it's like there's just no good advice I could give anybody. Like,
be kind to yourself.
Right. Well, you had asked, what would you say, partners of people with mental issues, and that's hard because there's no blanket statement. Even learning about the other person's things independently, like, that could be a problem, that could prove to be more problematic than not. If you came into this and you looked into, typical anxiety things and what you should do in reaction to those things, and you came across the wrong article, that didn't suit my specific things, or even just a lot of the general things that people are told to do for people with anxiety, like, a lot of those things are triggers for me specifically, because I went to Cross Creek, and so even going to a therapist is a trigger for me, Somebody telling me to go to a therapist is a trigger for me. There's, like, a lot of weird things because of my PTSD anxiety overlaps,
Sure.
So I just, there's not a lot of good advice to give somebody.
Yeah. Take deep breaths.
Right, that's good.
With slow exhales, preferably through the nose. Hit that, was it vagus nerve? I don't know which one it is. I'm not a doctor. But just slow, deep breaths. You got this.
Yeah, that seems like pretty decent blanket advice. That can help people with panic attacks, like they're in the midst of a panic attack.
Sure.
Breathing near them slowly. I have been helped by that, and was surprised and unexpectedly helped by that. Because the first time I ever had a panic attack around me, I just breathed near her as like loudly and deeply as I could, just.
Just a model it.
And so she started, people try and kind of sync up with those things.
Sure, yeah. I do this a lot with you.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Because sometimes it has the added bonus of, like, chances are, if you're in a rough place, my stress levels aren't low.
Yeah.
Right? Like, whether it just be trying to navigate the situation that you're, like, help you navigate your situation. Or if the thing stressing you happens to be a thing that's affecting both of us, which it often is.
Yeah.
Like, it's just useful to me to have deep breaths, but then it also stops me from saying dumb things, because, like, I'm busy breathing. And it does, I mean, by saying things, I mean, like, rushing anyone to be more okay than they are in the moment. That's the main thing that happens for me. So it shuts my mouth up, my talking, in order to do the deep breaths. Helps me not add any fuel to the fire of whatever's going down.
Yeah, that was a weird one today. That moment where you were like, just come lay your head on my chest. I was like, no, I'm not ready for that. And you were like, no, come lay your head on my chest, it's fine. And then you, like, let it go for half a second, and I was, like, so close to being there. Like, I had started venting, and I was about to do that, and you were like, why don't you just come here? And I was like, That was the wrong time. That was the wrong thing. And then I was like, I was mad at you because you ruined, like, what was about to be that moment for me. And I was also mad because it felt unfair to be mad at you for trying to help. And, like, I had so much anger and nowhere to put it. And it was so frustrating. And I still tried to put it on you. So.
Yeah.
Fuck mental illness. This shit sucks.
Yeah, that's true.